2 years ago, I had a problem with the tires of my car. My car was fairly new and reliable, but over time the tires started to get a ton of wear on them, and I found out that I needed them replaced one day. When I was out, I happened to be shopping at the Walmart near my house. I was in sort of the corner of the store, and I noticed that they had an auto center there. The auto center was at the very far back corner, and I had never really noticed it before, but I decided to give it a look and see how much their tires were and what kinds they had. As I walked into the area, I could see that nobody else was really over there. I walked over to the desk that they had to see if anybody was working there that I could talk to. There was nobody there though. And when I looked around the auto center, it didn't really look like it was used much anymore and seemed pretty outdated. After a minute or so, I decided to just look at the tire information that they did have and then just leave the next day. However, as I got home from work and got my mail, I saw that in my mail there was a postcard from the Walmart office auto center. It was basically just an advertisement to go, and I found it a funny coincidence how I had just been there the day before. But the next day, I got the same thing in the mail. Once again, it was the exact same postcard, and now it went from a funny coincidence to a bit strange. I took it inside and threw it away. The very next day, I got one again, and the day after that, and the day after that, I was getting the same exact flyer from the Walmart Auto Center every single day. As part of my mail, I decided that this was fishy enough, so I drove back to the same Walmart to try to see what was going on. I took a handful of the flyers that I received and went to the same auto department that I had been to before. This time, there was actually someone working there. Man was behind the counter, and I showed him the flyers and told him my situation. He looked at them and said that he didn't know why I kept getting them and basically didn't have an explanation for me. However, he pointed out to me that none of the postcards had actually been addressed to me and showed me a large stack of them that they had near the counter. When I saw this, it made me realize that whoever was giving me these postcards was not actually sending them to me, but physically putting them in my mailbox every day. I went back home after that and decided I would try to keep a lookout of my mailbox to see who was doing this. The first 2 days, I once again got more flyers, but failed to see who did it. But the next morning, I was up early at about 6 a.m. It was before the sun had risen, and I just happened to be looking out of my window. When I saw a man slowly walking down the side of the street. My eyes locked onto him when I noticed him walking closer to my mailbox. Then I saw him reach into the pocket of his jacket and place something in my mailbox. I had finally seen who did it, but right after he did, I noticed him look to my window and then look directly at me. I didn't know what to do when I saw this, but before I could think of anything, the man started sprinting up my yard and towards my house. He ran all the way to the front door and tried to open it. Luckily, it was locked, and I watched him run away. I thought he was leaving, but a couple of moments later, I heard the sound of the back door to my house trying to be opened. That's when I decided to call the police. Clearly, somebody was trying to break into my house. When I had called 911, I told them what was going on and started to walk into my bedroom. But as I was on my way there, and literally right after I hung up the phone, I heard the sound of glass breaking. That's when I decided to run into my bathroom instead and lock the door. I didn't hear any noises though after the breaking of glass. I was thinking maybe the man never did enter my house and had just left. I waited and waited in my bathroom for what felt like forever, not hearing anything and waiting for the police to arrive. I couldn't take it anymore, and I finally decided to leave the bathroom and walk out. But as soon as I did, I saw the man standing inside my house about 10 feet away. For me, smiling. It was the creepiest thing I had ever seen. The man was wearing a jacket with the hood up, and I couldn't really tell much details of his face other than he looked like a pretty average guy. I ran back inside the bathroom and locked the door quickly. Thankfully, at around the same time, I started to hear the sirens. The man never did try to enter the bathroom, and the police showed up only to find the man completely gone. They looked around my property and neighborhood, but never found him. After that, I never got anything else strange into the mail, and I never saw the man again. But sometimes I worry he will return. I also wonder what he was doing, if he had seen me at the Walmart and decided to randomly stalk me or what, but I'm glad I've never seen him again. Buffalo Wild Wings is one of my favorite restaurants. I love their food, especially their wings. And of course, I love how they have so many TVs with sports on them all the time. Last year, I went with my friend Adam. We weren't at our normal hometown, and this was a different Buffalo Wild Wings location that we had never been to. Before, it wasn't too crowded, but I would say it was averagely busy for about the time of day it was, which was 9 o'clock at night. We got to sit at a booth in the corner of the restaurant, which was especially nice because it felt a little more secluded. Nobody was really sitting that close to us, though. Anyways, we ordered, and a little while later the food came we were eating. And as we were, our server didn't come back to us for a long time. This wasn't really a problem because we had our food, but I just wanted some more water. After a while, though, there was a TV that was directly in front of us, and it suddenly went black. Then words appeared across the screen. The words were my own name as well as my friend's name, and repeated the words, "You are being watched, my friend." And I both looked at each other confused, not sure if this was a joke or what, but nobody here would know who we were or anything like that because we had never been here before we stayed there, and our server never did come back. But eventually somebody who did work there, who hadn't been our server, quickly walked up to us several minutes later and handed us our bills, then quickly walked away. He then came back less than a minute later, took our cards and returned them to us, and walked away again, all without saying a single word. Things had seemingly taken a very strange turn. The TV in front of us then went back to normal sports. As we were leaving, my friend and I sought out a server and asked them if there was ever a problem with the TV. She said no, and then walked away. My friend and I then left the restaurant and walked back to my car. When I was getting into my car, I was sure I heard someone whisper my name really loudly. It sounded like it came from maybe 20 feet away. I froze and listened, but heard nothing more. We left after that, and that ended a very bizarre and creepy trip to Buffalo Wild Wings. Last year, I really needed a new laptop. I used a computer daily for college and work occasionally as well. It was something that I really needed in my daily life. The one I had was old and really slow, and I had been saving up to buy a new one. For a while, my sister suggested that I look on Facebook Marketplace, and so one night I went out and searched laptops. I was looking for a newer and more powerful one, and after several days of searching and a lot of research, found a listing of one that seemed to be a really good deal. I did some more quick research on it and decided it was the best option for me. I then reached out to the seller. The seller responded to me pretty quickly. His name was Brian. When I contacted him, he told me he could meet up with me the next afternoon when he got off of work. I told him I was willing to buy the laptop at the time as long as it worked good, and I would pay the full price he was asking for it, which was $800 cash. I knew that was significantly less money than it costed brand new in the stores, and I felt like I was going to get a really good deal. Brian told me that worked fine, and we agreed to meeting up the next day. When he got off of work, there was a little shopping area in the town that I lived in, and we decided to meet in the parking lot. In the place, it was usually pretty busy, and we drove into one of the back corners of the parking lot. There was a more quiet area. My sister decided to go with me, so I wasn't alone, and we drove to the location right on time. It was 2 in the afternoon, and I think we got there maybe a couple of minutes early. Then we waited. I had messaged Brian telling him when I was leaving, and he told me he was leaving as well. When he wasn't there yet, I figured he was on his way, or maybe he got held up at work. My sister and I both sat in the car waiting and just talked as we did. Eventually, time went by, and we started to get concerned. Nobody was near us in the quiet area of the parking lot where we agreed to meet, and Brian was now more than 10 minutes late. I messaged Ryan telling him exactly where I was in the car that I was in and asked where he was. We kept waiting, and he didn't respond. Pretty soon it was almost 30 minutes past our meeting time. I then looked and saw that Brian had read my message that I had sent to him, but he never responded. My sister and I left, feeling frustrated that the guy never showed up. My sister thought maybe he realized the laptop he was selling was worth a lot more than the asking price, or something like that. We both drove back home, which was our parents' house that we lived in while we were away from college. Our parents were both at work, so it was just us there for the time. After we got home, I once again went back on Facebook Marketplace, but it appeared as though I had been blocked by Brian, and everything was deleted. This made me angry to see, and after that I decided to search for more laptops and kind of start over. I was in my bedroom when suddenly I heard my sister come running, and she told me she heard noise coming from the back window and then saw a guy out there. We both walked out, and almost as soon as we did, we heard the sound of our back door being opened. It was only 3 o'clock, and our parents usually didn't arrive home until after 5. We knew it was probably the guy my sister had seen. We both ran back into my room and shut the door. We pressed our heads up against the door and listened. Somebody was now walking through our house. My bedroom was at the end of the hallway, but the man was not All that far away, I asked my sister what we should do. She said she was going to call the police and took out her phone, but just as she did, we heard the footsteps headed towards us. We got as quiet as we could. My sister wasn't able to place the call to the police yet because we were afraid to make any kind of noises heard. Whoever was there walked slowly into the hallway and then into a bedroom. My sister said it sounded like he was in her room. Now, I then got an idea. I said that we had to get out of there, and I pointed to my window. I then ran over to it, and as quietly as I could started to open it. The house only had one level, so as long as we could get out there, we would be able to get away. I opened up the window, and as I did, it suddenly made a loud noise. Just then we heard the guys start to leave my sister's room and come down the hall towards my bedroom. I jumped out the window, followed by my sister, and as she was climbing out, I heard my bedroom door open. We both ran out the yard and down to the neighbors across the street who we knew really well. Luckily, they were home, and we waited in their garage as we called the police. When the police got there, the man was still in our house, and they caught him in our basement. He turned out to be the same man named Brian that was going to sell me a laptop. He had never met with us, but was in the same shopping center parking lot when we were there. He was just parked next to all the other cars. He then followed us home without us knowing and attempted to break into our house, possibly for the cash I had to buy the laptop. At least that's my best guess of his reasons. Either way, I won't use Facebook Marketplace again. This happened a couple of months back when I was shopping at Home Depot. I went there to look at some power tools for some projects around the house that I've been putting off for a long time. I went there on a Friday night because I wanted to get some work done on Saturday. When I got to the store, it was quiet and not many other people were there. I went to the power tool section and looked at a few of them and looked at some of the tools and their prices too. I was the only person in that area until a guy came into the aisle with me and started looking something. He was at one end and I was at the other. I wasn't really paying attention to him, but I knew he was there. And after he was there for about 2 or 3 minutes, I would say, I saw him coming closer to me. I looked and he was approaching me. The man was really tall, probably 65, and wore a gray sweatshirt and ripped jeans. He looked pretty young and had a kind of ugly looking beard. He said hi to me, and I said hi back to the man. He then asked me if I could lend him some money. I told the man sorry, but no, and then decided to walk away. I heard the guy curse under his breath, and I went to another section of the store. It wasn't until I walked away that I realized I forgot the tools, and I hadn't even figured out which ones I was going to buy yet. But I didn't want to turn around and go back to the man because of our awkward encounter. I decided to walk around and get some batteries, which I also needed, and then go back over and hope that the guy was gone by. Then I walked around looking for the batteries, which were at the far other end of the store. I got them, and as I was headed back, I saw the man once again. He was walking in my direction now, and we made really awkward eye contact as I walked past him. I didn't know why the guy had asked me for money, but why would I give some random guy at Home Depot money? It was just weird. I walked all the way back to the other end into the power tools. I got to my original aisle and was there for about 30 seconds before I saw someone enter the aisle again. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed it was the same man as before. I glanced over for a split second. I saw that he was just staring at me and shaking his head. I didn't know what this guy's problem was, and I did my best to ignore him, but I now realized he had probably followed me to the other end of the store and back. Maybe he was mad that I didn't give money, but I wasn't going to let him intimidate me into giving him anything. I finally made up my mind and got 2 power tools. Then I headed to the checkouts. As I walked over, so did the man. I was getting sort of annoyed now by this guy following me. I was kind of afraid that he might try to jump me when we got out into the parking lot or something. The man wasn't buying anything and had nothing in his hands. As I was checking out and paying for my items, I saw him just standing behind the check lanes watching me. Now, there were 2 main doors in the store, one at one end, which was kind of the entrance, but you could actually go out of it as well, and another one near the check lanes. That was supposed to be the exit. Once I had paid and got my receipt, I started to walk over to the entrance as I was going to leave there because it was farther away from the man. I saw the man then start to head that way as well, and he sped up his walk and started to go way ahead of me. I thought maybe he was trying to beat me outside, so I changed my mind and then turned around and suddenly went out to the other doors. This worked because I didn't see the man turn around. It was better for me anyways because my car was parked on that Sighed I felt I had lost a man now and walked out the doors and left. I got out to the parking lot and thankfully didn't see the man at all, so I rushed to my car and got inside. I felt relieved to finally be safe and in my car, but as soon as I had just shut my door and looked in the rearview mirror to leave there, he was standing directly behind my car and staring at me. He then yelled at me to get out of my car. I locked the doors and started the engine. That's when the man ran to my rear passenger's door and tried opening it. I quickly backed out and turned to the other direction, then sped away from there. I'm not sure what the man planned on doing, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out. This story happened years ago when I was in college. I was planning on buying a used car and had saved up some money. I went to the bank to withdraw $7,000 in cash to potentially make a purchase of a car I had been looking at. There was a car at a nearby used car dealership, and I was really interested. I got to the bank on my way home from work and made it just before they closed. They were really quiet, most likely because of the time, and I was able to get the money with a couple of minutes to spare. As soon as I turned around to leave the bank, I saw a guy sitting down looking at me. He was in a chair kind of near the entrance. I left the bank, and after I did, I noticed that the man left as well. I began walking to my car, and I heard the man start to walk towards me. I looked behind me, but he had now changed directions and was walking to his car. I got inside mine and drove home. I lived pretty close to the bank, so I didn't even notice until I had turned onto the quiet road just before my street that the truck the man had gotten in was behind me. I noticed it even more when it turned onto my quiet road after me. Then when I got to the driveway of my parents' house, I saw the truck turn in with me. Now I was really confused. What could this guy possibly want with me? I stayed in my car and waited to see if the guy would turn around or something like that. Instead, he drove up and parked extremely close to my back bumper and then just stayed there. After about 30 seconds or so, I watched the man get out of his car and start to approach mine. He walked quickly and got right up to my front driver's window. He then signaled for me to roll my window down. I started to roll it down, but as I did, the man tried to open my door. He then reached inside my window as it got lowered enough and got a hold of my shoulder, then started to find where the door unlocked. I didn't know what else to do, so I put the car into drive and drove forward a few feet before backing up and turning the car around. I basically dragged the man with me as I did, and we struggled for a bit, but he finally let go as I sped up, and I ended up driving away down the street. I quickly called my parents, who were at home at the time, and told them. Then I called the police. The man ran back to his truck and got inside of it. I drove as fast as I could out of the street and in the neighborhood surrounding us, so he couldn't find me. When I was told that the police had arrived at our house, I drove back home. By that time, the man and his truck were long gone, and there was nothing really left behind. Unfortunately, I didn't get his license plate, but I was able to give the police a pretty decent description of the guy and his car. Thankfully, I was fine, and the man didn't come back. I think when the man saw me walk out of the bank with all that cash, he wanted to try to rob me. Thankfully, he wasn't able to. I had a yard sale at my house a few years ago. I cleaned out my entire house and put everything out in my yard and in my driveway for people to look through. And I lived in a sort of populated neighborhood, so I knew a lot of people would probably come. I was planning on having the sale go for 2 days, which would be on Friday and Saturday. Sure enough, when I had my sale, a lot of people came through. On the first day, I was selling more things than I thought I would, to be honest, and everything was going really well. I was helping people and didn't really pay attention to all who was there. But then a woman came up to me at one point on Friday, told me that a man had gone through my backyard, and he seemed suspicious, like he was trying to get in my house. I hadn't even noticed and wasn't really paying attention to the backyard, so I got up and walked over. I didn't see anybody, though I looked around for a few seconds, but I had to get back to my front yard where the sale was, so I returned. The woman told me she thought the man had left now, but just wanted to let me know. I told her I didn't see anyone, but she gave me a description of the man just in case I saw him. Again, I kept an eye out, but I didn't notice him at all the rest of the day. When, well, I made a lot more money than I thought I would, and eventually it got late and people stopped showing up, so I decided to close the sale down for the day. I moved everything into my garage and then locked it. After that, I went inside and watched TV for a little bit, but I planned to start the sale early the next day at about 7 o'clock in the morning. So I went to bed. I went up to my bedroom to go to bed that night, and soon after I started to hear noise downstairs. as if there was someone walking around. I immediately thought of the man who had been in my backyard earlier. I locked my bedroom door and listened closely. I just kept hearing the sound of somebody walking around. It sounded like whoever was there was in the living room. I reached for my phone to call the police, but it wasn't there. Then I started to panic. I always had my phone with me, but it wasn't in my pocket where it usually was. I realized then that I must have forgotten it downstairs. I had been on the couch watching TV for a while, so I assumed that's where it was. That was also where whoever I heard downstairs was. I wasn't sure what to do, but I had no phone or way of communication in there. I eventually heard the man start to go up the stairs. My heart started to beat even harder than it already was. He came up the stairs and started down the hallway. My door was the second one on the right. He seemed to walk closer, and I was up against the door listening. It was almost as if he had come straight from my door and then tried opening it. It didn't open because it was locked, but I thought I was going to have a heart attack when he tried to open it. He seemed to continue down the hallway after that. Then he walked back downstairs. I listened for a while, but after that I didn't hear anything. I thought maybe he had left, and I wasn't sure why he was there in the first place or how he had gotten in. He kept listening for probably a whole hour, and I didn't hear anything. So I then decided to go downstairs to get my phone. I still felt really creeped out, and I walked down the stairs to my dark living room. Thankfully, I didn't hear or see anyone, and I figured he had left. I looked in the couch, and sure enough, my phone was there, and it had just gone between the cushions. I got it, and then went back upstairs and called the police. They came out a while later, and I let them in the house. I went outside and spoke to an officer, but then to my surprise, I saw a few officers come out with the man. I didn't know he had still been in my house. I was told that he had been found hiding underneath my staircase in a closet with a knife in his hand. This happened to me during my senior year of high school. It was the spring semester, and I had taken an elective class called Speed and Agility Development. I was an athlete in high school, so this sounded like a fun and easy class to take. Basically, what we would do every day is sprinting drills and stuff, and sometimes play games. We would do something different almost every day, and the teacher, Mr. Johnson, would mix it up a lot. I remember one day, Mr. Johnson told us we were going to take a hike off campus. Our high school was a little bit out in the country, and across the street from the school in the back there was a large woods with some hiking paths on it. When class started, we met up in the gym, but then walked outside and crossed the street to start the path in the woods. Mr. Johnson said we would jog along part of the trail and hike the rest of it. Then he took off running. There's about 15 kids in the class, or so I would say, and we all started running following his lead. I decided to hang back with a couple of my friends in the class, and we ran in the back. We let ourselves fall kind of far behind, and the deeper we got into the woods, the thicker it was, and the path became more and more narrow. As I was running, my shoe suddenly came untied, and I stopped to tie it. The friends I was with offered to stop, but I told them catch right back up to them. I took maybe 30 seconds and then continued with the jog. I didn't hear anybody else anymore, though I started to run faster to try to catch back with the group. But shortly after that, I came up to a stop on the trail that led to 3 different paths. I didn't know which way the rest of the class had gone, so I went with the one in the middle. I started running on it quickly until I was almost out of breath, but saw no sign of anyone. I ran back to where the path separated again, and this time went a different way. By this point, I was so far behind, I had no idea where anyone else was. I jogged along another path for a while and thought I heard someone, so I began to run faster to catch up with the group. I kept running through the thick woods until I could hear. I was closer. Once I thought I could hear the class again, I slowed back up. I saw someone that made me feel a lot better until I got closer. I realized the person I was seeing wasn't in my class. Somebody was walking off the path in the woods to my left, but they looked like a grown man. I was sort of far away, and all I could see between the thick tree branches everywhere was that the man had long black hair and a green shirt. As I got closer, he suddenly stopped and turned around and looked at me. I thought about waving to him or saying hi, but the man instead started running deeper into the woods. After he had noticed me, I thought it was strange, but more importantly, I realized that I was now lost in the woods. I didn't have my phone with me because Mr. Johnson never let us bring them to class. I thought maybe the man that I'd seen in the woods would know how to get out of here, so I yelled hey to him to see if he would come back. He didn't answer me though, and by this time he was way deeper in the woods. I kept walking, and I figured I would eventually get out of there, I would say. Like 2 or 3 minutes later though, as I was walking, I started to hear somebody walking behind me just off the path in the woods. I stopped and looked behind me and didn't see anybody at first, but then just barely could see the man in the green shirt. He was behind a larger tree, and I just barely saw him, but he was there. He wasn't walking out, and I could tell he was trying to hide from me. I turned back, and I just kept continuing on with the way that I had been going. I heard the man walking behind me once more. As I did, he was slowly getting closer and closer to me. It was starting to creep me out, so finally I turned around and looked again. This time I caught the man as he was nearly on the path, and I watched him duck back behind more trees. I said hi to the man, but in as friendly of a tone as I could. Then I asked the man if he knew how to get out of those woods. The man didn't answer me or even make any sound at first. Then, without warning, he charged out from his hiding place and started running at me with a crazed look in his eyes. I turned and ran, which was the only thing I could think to do. I was running as fast as I could through the woods and then down the path with the man hot on my heels. It didn't take long for me to realize that I was faster than the man, but not by a lot. He was pretty quick, and I was sprinting. And when the path would come to multiple different paths, I would choose one at the last second to try to throw the guy off who was chasing me. Eventually, I took a sharp turn to the left. I briefly went through some thick brush and woods and then back onto another path. The man seemed to go into a different direction, and then he seemed to stop where he was. I continued quietly down the path that I was on. I thought I had finally lost the guy. However, when I turned the corner, I saw the path was leading me right up to a pond. There was a very small dock on it, and thick woods surrounded the pond by all directions. I then heard noises in the woods coming closer. It had to be the man again. Sure enough, I saw him walking at a fast pace towards me. He was coming at an angle to the right, and without hesitation, I sprinted back to the left, down the opposite way of the path that I was on. I kept running and running, going back down each way that I had already gone, hoping I would eventually find a way out. I heard the man running behind me almost the whole way. I kept on running, and eventually I stopped hearing the man so closely my running slowed down to a more manageable jog, and I kept going. I was going back down every path I had been on, and finally I saw an opening of the path. I had made it back to where we had originally started the hike. As a class, I didn't know what time it was or where the rest of the class was, but I decided to just go back to the school. Anyways, I made it back, and within maybe 10 minutes I saw the rest of the class coming. I ran to my friends, and it turns out nobody really noticed I was gone besides the couple of friends I had been with. They just assumed I ditched class. I was happy to make it back all right, because those woods were way bigger than I thought they were, and whoever that guy was after me for some reason. This happened just about a week ago. I'm 20 years old, and I live with my parents. During the summer, however, they went out of town for some of their friends' wedding, and I wasn't invited. This was fine with me though, because I didn't really know the people anyways, and it's kind of fun to have the whole house to myself. We have a split level house, and my bedroom is at the front end of it. But on Friday night, I stayed up really late watching a movie in the living room. I like that TV better because it's much bigger than mine. The couch in the living room is also super comfortable, so I just decided to sleep there for the night. Anyways, I woke up Saturday morning, and it was still super dark in the house. In the living room, we had a sliding glass door that connects to the deck in the back. The blinds were covering most of it, and that's the main source of light, but there was maybe a 5T gap to look out, and I saw that it was raining. I then looked at the clock, and it was almost SD 9:30 a.m. I was just sitting there on the couch and turned on the TV when all of a sudden I heard 2 knocks at the front door. They weren't really hard knocks, sort of light, and immediately my heart started pounding. I know it's not a big deal just to get knocks on the door, but we lived towards the end of a dead-end road, and our neighborhood was very quiet. It wasn't very big, and it was extremely rare for anybody to knock on our doors for any reason. Maybe it's also because I'm a shy person, but it made me really nervous for some reason. From where I was sitting on the couch, I was just barely around the corner, and I couldn't see the front door, and whoever was at the front door probably couldn't see me. At least I was hoping they couldn't see me. I was wondering who it could possibly be, especially in the middle of pouring rain. Then I remembered something. I had ordered an Amazon package and was expecting it today. Suddenly, I felt so much better and started to relax. I opened up my Amazon app on my phone and clicked on my orders, expecting to see that it was delivered, but when I looked, It said it wouldn't arrive until 5 p.m. that day. Suddenly, I went back to being super nervous. I decided to carefully look out and see if anyone was at the door. It had now been maybe a minute or two since they had originally knocked, and they hadn't knocked again since I slowly moved to look out the window. And when I did, I saw that nobody was there now. This made me feel a little better now that they were gone, but right at that moment I heard the noise of somebody walking up the stairs of our back deck. I couldn't see because of the blinds covering most of the sliding glass door, but I then heard footsteps on the deck. I started shaking, and the next thing I knew, I saw a man appear in the opening of the sliding glass door where you could see outside. He was staring right at me, but had no expression on his face. He was bald and wore a black jacket and black pants. The guy then tried sliding the door open. Thankfully, it was locked, but I knew if he really wanted to, he could probably break the glass between us. I ran away into the bathroom that was just down the hall. I had no idea who this guy was or what he was doing here. I had been right to be so nervous about this for seemingly no reason. As I closed the bathroom door and locked it, that's when I heard the first loud bang against the window, as if he was going to try to break it. I knew I needed to call the police, but then I realized that I didn't have my phone. I had left it back out in the living room. I heard another loud bang from the window, but I didn't hear glass breaking. I knew it was a risk, but I opened the door back up and ran out to the living room couch. I looked around frantically and finally saw my phone. Then I made another mad dash for the bathroom. As I was, another bang came from the window. I looked back at the man as I ran. I saw he had been kicking at the glass and trying to break it. I got back into the bathroom and locked the door again. Then I called 911 on my phone. As soon as the operator answered, I told them everything. They told me to slow down and repeat what was going on. That's when I heard the sound of glass breaking. I repeated what was happening as best as I could, and just after that I heard the sound of the man starting to walk inside the house. He was walking straight for the bathroom that I was in. When he got to the doorway, he tried the door and it wouldn't open because it was locked. I backed away from it and went into the shower. The 911 operator said that they would stay on the line with me, which made me feel a little bit better because I was terrified. The man then started to bang on the bathroom door and my phone suddenly went silent. I looked at it and saw that it had died. I hadn't plugged it in the previous night. I figured the man was kicking on the door the same way he had been kicking on the sliding glass door, and I knew he would probably break this as well. I heard him walk away for a minute and then go down the stairs that we had. He was gone for maybe a full minute, and then I heard him return. There was another loud bang against the bathroom door. With this one, sounded much harder. I think he had found one of the baseball bats we had in our house or something. This made me even more terrified than I already was. I grabbed the towels we had in the bathroom and covered myself. I then went into the small bathroom closet we had and closed that door. I just barely fit in there, but I had to do what I could. The guy hit at the door a few more times and it really sounded like he was breaking it now, but that noise was interrupted by another one. It was the noise of a loud knock on the front door. I could barely hear someone shouting police. I hoped they would be able to get inside fast. And just after that I heard the man walking away towards the back of the house where he had gotten, and I stayed hidden. And a short time later I heard a bunch of shouting. Eventually I heard someone yelling, "Put it down." When I finally heard the voice of multiple officers inside my house, I finally came out of the bathroom. They had literally gotten there just in the nick of time, and the man had been caught. I'm really lucky how fast the police were to arrive that day. This was very recent and I'm still a little shook up about it, but I'm just happy to be okay. A few years ago, I was a girl in my freshman year of high school. I wanted to make some extra money aside from my job of babysitting, so I looked on Craigslist for jobs. I found a job for cleaning houses, and it seemed like the best one for me because it was something that I could do, and it didn't require me to be 16 because I was just 14 years old at the time I responded to the ad. And a man who said his name was Joe got back to me. He asked me a little bit about myself, and after answering his questions, he said I could have the job. I was pretty excited to be earning the extra money, and a couple of days later, I started. The man gave me an address, and my mother dropped me off there. It was a pretty normal looking house in a normal neighborhood. But when I got to the front door, it had a sign on it that said go around back. I went to the back to see a man who I assumed was Joe. He came up and introduced himself to me. Then he told me that this was not the house I would be cleaning, and we walked about 3 blocks until we arrived at another house. This seemed kind of weird to me, but I just shrugged it off. He invited me inside and then started giving me instructions on what to music Clean after he was done explaining things to me, he said he would be in his office. And went downstairs. I cleaned for a little while and everything was going well. I wanted to open a window to get some fresh air, but when I tried, the window was locked. Then I tried another one and that was locked as well. I cleaned a little bit more, but I still wanted some fresh air, so I decided to step outside for a minute. But when I tried the front door, it seemed to be locked from the outside. Joe's office was downstairs, so I knocked on the door to the basement, but there was no answer. I tried the door and it was locked. I started to feel uncomfortable and thinking of all the possibilities that could be happening of why Joe kept the doors and windows locked. I tried my best not to think about it, but I couldn't get the bad thoughts out of my head. I didn't even care about the job anymore. I just wanted to leave at this point. I walked all around the house trying to find an exit. The back door was also locked. I kept looking. I looked at one of the larger windows, but then I saw something. When I got closer, I could see that there was a tiny camera pointed at me. Then I heard the basement door open. Joe started calling my name. He asked me what I was doing. I couldn't find a place to hide quickly, so I decided to play dumb. I walked back over to Joe and said that I was just cleaning. He said in a nervous voice that it didn't seem like I was. He began to walk a little closer to me, and then he said I needed to come with him. As soon as he said that, I ran past him as fast as I could and into his basement. I shut the door and locked it. Then I ran downstairs. What I saw down there was 2 computer monitors on a desk with camera angles displaying every room in the house, including the bathroom. Then I heard a key turning the lock to the basement door. I ran to a bathroom downstairs and locked that door and called the police. I heard Joe coming down the stairs. It didn't take long before he got to the bathroom. He started pounding on the door. Luckily for me, he did not seem to have a key to this room, but I knew he would probably be capable of busting down the door. There was a window leading to outside at the top of the bathroom, so I stood on top of the toilet and tried to open it. This one was not locked. I climbed out of it as I heard Joe continuing to pound on the bathroom door. I got out and ran as fast as I could to a neighbor's house and banged on their door. An old lady answered and let me in. When she saw how I was in a panic, we waited there for the police to show up, but unfortunately, when they did, Joe was gone. I showed the Craigslist ad to the police and the text messages with Joe. They were able to track him down and catch him about a week later. I feel very lucky that I was able to escape his house a couple of years ago. I worked at a gas station. It was a pretty small town about 2 hours north of where I was from. I was living there temporarily while I worked on flipping the house I owned. I worked on the house during the day and I would work at the gas station on nights to help pay for it. The gas station was right off of a major freeway, and we would get lots of people passing through. Music town. One night, I was working a 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift. I didn't mind these shifts because they would not be very busy, and I always found things to do most of the time. I would be the only one working for a majority of the shift. On this night, there was a decent amount of people coming through for the first few hours, and at about 1 a.m., things really started to quiet down. I mopped the floors and then went back behind the counter. Then I noticed a car pulling into the station. It was a regular black car and looked pretty normal, except for when it got closer, I noticed that it had no license plates on it. The car drove very slowly around the front and then went to the side of the building where I could no longer see it. About 5 minutes passed, and then a man came inside who I assume was the driver of the car. He was a very tall man, about 6.5 feet tall and pretty thin. He was wearing a black sweater and gray pants. He had a very serious look on his face. He walked in the front door and looked directly at me. The counter was on the other end of the store, so he was probably about 40 feet away. He didn't say anything and just looked at me. Eventually, I couldn't take the awkwardness, and I said hello to him and waved. He responded by turning and walking to the other side of the store. He just stood there, no longer looking at me, but looking at the wall or whatever items were for sale in that area. I was pretty confused at this time, and I was getting kind of creeped out by this guy. Eventually, he walked into the bathroom, which was at the end of the store. About 10 minutes passed, and he remained in there. Another customer finally pulled into the gas station and got some fuel and came inside to pay. I was so relieved by them finally being a normal customer. I almost wanted to bring up the man in the conversation with them because it was so strange, but I felt it wouldn't be professional, so I didn't. The customer left, and I once again felt pretty creeped out knowing this guy was still in the bathroom a long hour went by and we didn't get any customers. The man didn't come out of the bathroom either. I felt it had been long enough and I decided to walk over to the bathroom. It was a bathroom with 2 stalls in it, so I could just walk in to wash my hands or something, and it wouldn't seem weird. I got to the bathroom and opened the door. I saw that the lights were out and it was pitch black in there. I reached around for the light, but when I found it I saw that it was already switched on. This freaked me out. I thought about just leaving, but I decided to turn on the flashlight to my phone to look around. When I did, I looked in the first stall and it was empty. Then I saw the second one. I could see the man's legs from the bottom of the stall. Then I shined my light up to see the man's head poking out from above the stall, staring directly at me with the creepiest smile I have ever seen. I dropped my phone as soon as I saw him. I picked it up as quick as I could and then ran for the bathroom door. I got out there and the man did not come out and follow me. I went back to the counter and debated what I should do. For a few minutes I really did not want to go back in there, but I also didn't want the man scaring customers that went to the bathroom, and I felt that it was my responsibility to keep the place safe as much as I didn't want to. I decided to go back and tell the man he would have to leave. I walked back to the bathroom and opened the door. I shouted to the man that he needed to leave, but there was no response. I can't say that I was surprised. I decided to just put an out of order sign on the door because of him and the light not working. Several hours went by and I only got a few customers. Amazingly, the man never left the bathroom. Finally, at 4 a.m. my coworker Devin came in and we worked together for the final hour of my shift. I felt much safer and I told him what had happened. We decided to go into the bathroom together to see what the man was still doing in there. We walked in with our flashlight shining, but when we got inside we saw that both stalls were empty, not a trace of the man at all. I have no idea how the man was able to leave without me seeing him. Thinking about it still freaks me out. For